The last goodbye. The rain didn't just fall, it screamed against the pavement, a relentless downpour that mirrored the storm inside my chest. The kind of rain that didn't cleanse, but drowned. I stood beneath the flickering street lamp, its sickly yellow glow casting long, wavering shadows like skeletal fingers stretching toward me. The cold had long since seeped through my coat, but I barely felt it. My entire body was numb, except for my heart. That ached. Daniel's hands cradled my face, his thumbs brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. His touch was warm, so warm, and for a second I let myself melt into it. "This is the last time. You don't have to go back to him," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. The words sent a shiver through me, not because I didn't want to hear them, but because I did, more than anything. I closed my eyes, my breath hitching. "I do," I lied. "Just not like this. Not with the guilt, not with the shame." For months I had planned this moment with the precision of a surgeon carving out a tumor. No messy outbursts, no dramatic confessions, just a quiet, calculated unraveling of the life I had built with Marcus. Marcus. My husband. No, the stranger who slept beside me, who had long since traded whispered promises for cold silence and empty glances. The man who had buried himself in work, in distractions, in anything that wasn't me. And then Daniel had walked into my life like sunlight breaking through a decade of winter. He was everything Marcus wasn't. Present, passionate, alive. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world, like I mattered. And God help me, I had fallen, but I wasn't reckless. Tonight was the end. One last stolen moment, one final taste of what could have been, and then I would walk away. From Daniel, from Marcus, from the hollow shell of my marriage. I would file for divorce tomorrow. Clean, quiet, no accusations, no messy fights, just freedom. Daniel's lips brushed mine, soft and bittersweet. A goodbye disguised as a kiss. And then, a sound. A sharp, wounded gasp ripped from the throat of someone who had just had their heart torn out. My blood turned to ice. I knew that sound. Slowly, as if moving through tar, I turned my head. There, standing just feet away, his umbrella discarded at his feet like a fallen shield, was Marcus. Rain streamed down his face, clinging to his lashes, dripping from his jaw. But his eyes, God, his eyes were dry, hollow. He wasn't shouting, wasn't screaming, he just stared. At me, at Daniel, at the betrayal etched into every breath between us, and in that moment I saw it, the exact second his love for me shattered. His lips parted, but no words came. Just a shaky exhale like a man realizing he'd been stabbed only after the blade had already sunk in. Then, without a sound, he turned and walked away. The rain swallowed him whole. Daniel's grip on me tightened. "Elena!" I wrenched away, my legs moving before my mind could catch up. "Marcus!" My voice cracked, raw and desperate, but he didn't stop, didn't look back. He just kept walking, and with every step he took, I felt it. The ground crumbling beneath me. The future I had so carefully planned collapsing. Because this wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I was supposed to leave him, not the other way around.
The house wasn't just dark, it was tomb-like. I stood frozen in the doorway, rainwater pooling at my feet, my fingers still clenched around the keys I hadn't needed to use. The door had been unlocked, left unlocked. A silent invitation, or a warning. "Marcus?" My voice was barely audible, swallowed whole by the suffocating quiet. No answer. The air smelled wrong, not like home, not like the faint traces of Marcus's cologne or the vanilla candle I always burned in the evenings. It smelled sterile, empty. I stepped inside, my wet shoes leaving dark prints on the hardwood. The floorboards groaned beneath me, each creak a deafening accusation in the stillness. Traitor. The living room was untouched. His favorite mug sat clean and upside down on the drying rack. The blanket we'd curled under during movie nights was folded neatly over the arm of the couch. Everything was in its place, except him. I moved down the hallway, my pulse throbbing in my throat. The bedroom door was closed, always left ajar, just enough to let the light in. Now it was shut tight, a barricade. My hand hovered over the knob. For a wild, irrational moment, I imagined him waiting on the other side. Maybe sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, maybe furious, maybe broken, maybe still mine. I pushed the door open. Cold air rushed out to greet me. The bed was pristine, not a wrinkle, not a dent. The pillows fluffed, the comforter smoothed with military precision. He hadn't slept here. My gaze snagged on the dresser, a single sheet of paper, stark white against the dark wood. I already knew what it would say. My hands shook as I picked it up. The words blurred, not from tears, but from the sheer finality of them. I saw everything. No anger, no questions. Just 5 syllables that carved me hollow. 2 days passed in a haze. I called his phone 17 times. It rang and rang and rang before dumping me into voicemail, his voice, warm and familiar, the way he'd sounded years ago, before the distance. Before me. I texted. I emailed. I even drove by his office only to be told he'd taken a leave of absence. Gone. Like I'd willed him to be, like I'd planned. But this silence, this absence, wasn't what I'd wanted. I'd imagined tearful confrontations. Bitter words flung like knives. Something to prove he'd cared enough to fight. Not this. Nothingness. On the 3rd morning, the doorbell rang. I nearly tripped, rushing to answer it, my heart lurching. Marcus, it's Marcus. He's back. A stranger stood on the porch. Crisp suit, polished shoes, a manila envelope in his gloved hands. Elena Whitmore? I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He held out the envelope. Divorce papers. You've been served. The world tilted. I fumbled with the seal, my fingers clumsy. The documents spilled out, dry, clinical, ruthless in their efficiency. No demands for counseling, no mediation, just a swift surgical severing of every tie, and clipped to the front page a single sticky note in handwriting I'd know anywhere. You wanted freedom. Here it is. The penmanship was flawless, not a tremor, not a smear. He'd signed without hesitation. I sank to the floor, the papers scattering around me like ashes. This wasn't freedom. This was oblivion.
The divorce papers arrived like a death certificate. I sat at my kitchen table, tracing the embossed letterhead with numb fingers. The process had taken less than 3 weeks. No negotiations, no arguments over who got the good china. Marcus had surrendered everything with terrifying indifference. The house, the investments, even the wedding album gathering dust in the hall closet. You keep it all, his lawyer had said with a tight smile. Mr. Whitmore isn't interested in prolonging this. As if our marriage had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience to be cleared from his schedule. At first, I told myself this was victory. I was free. Daniel could move his things into the empty drawers Marcus had left behind. We could drink wine in my living room, on my couch, in the home that was now entirely mine. But the first night Daniel stayed over, I caught myself listening for the garage door, for the familiar jingle of keys tossed in the ceramic bowl by the door, for footsteps that would never come again. Daniel noticed. You're thinking about him, he murmured against my shoulder as we lay in bed, Marcus's bed, the moonlight painting stripes across the sheets. I didn't deny it. The whispers started slowly, a sudden hush when I entered the break room at work. The way my colleague Jessica, who'd cried at our wedding, now found urgent meetings whenever I approached. Even the barista at my regular cafe, who'd always asked after Marcus, served me with stiff silence. They knew. The realization hit me like a punch to the throat. Marcus had told no one, I was sure of that. The man who'd once spent 20 minutes debating whether to post a vacation photo because it might overshare would never air our dirty laundry. But people knew. They always do. Maybe it was the way my ring finger looked naked and strange. Maybe it was the shadows under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Or maybe it was simply the way the universe delights in pointing fingers at fallen women. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, my supposed best friend since college. We need to talk. 3 words that had never preceded anything good. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. I knew what this was about, the same thing it was always about these days. Marcus. Always Marcus. I saw him on a Thursday. Daniel had taken me to Il Moro, the absurdly expensive Italian place Marcus had always promised we'd try for our anniversary. We were halfway through our appetizers when the hostess seated a couple at the corner booth. A familiar laugh cut through the murmur of the restaurant. I'd know that laugh anywhere. Marcus sat bathed in golden candlelight, his fingers laced with those of a stunning brunette. She was saying something that made him throw his head back in genuine amusement, the way he hadn't done in years. Not with me. The woman reached across the table to brush a crumb from his cheek, her wedding ring glinting under the lights. Wait, my breath caught. That wasn't just any woman. That was Claire. Claire from his office. Claire who'd attended our 4th of July barbecue last summer. Claire who was, according to Marcus, happily married with 2 kids. Daniel followed my gaze. Is that? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because in that moment several horrifying realizations crashed over me in rapid succession. Marcus hadn't been ignoring me those last years. He'd been replacing me. His indifference during the divorce wasn't surrender, it was relief. And worst of all, the affair I'd thought was my secret escape? It had been his exit strategy all along. My wine glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the floor like my carefully constructed narrative. Marcus glanced over at the sound. Our eyes met across the restaurant. And for the first time since that rainy night, he smiled at me. Not a smile of forgiveness, not a smile of regret, but the satisfied smirk of a man who just checkmated his opponent. The night I saw Marcus with Claire, something inside me broke, not into pieces but into something sharper, something dangerous. I had spent months meticulously planning my quiet escape, agonizing over every detail to ensure a clean break. But Marcus, he had been playing a different game entirely, and now it was my turn. I sat in my car outside the restaurant, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Daniel had offered to stay, but I sent him home. I needed to think, to plan. You keep it all, Marcus's lawyer had said. At the time, I thought it was indifference. Now I knew better. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah. She answered after the 4th ring, her voice hesitant. Elena? Did you know? I cut her off, my voice eerily calm. A pause. Too long. Know what? About Marcus and Claire. Silence, then a sigh. Elena, listen. That was all the confirmation I needed. The next morning I called in sick to work and drove to Marcus's old office. Not to confront him, no, that would come later, but to watch. To learn. I parked across the street, sunglasses hiding my face, a notebook in my lap. Fact hash 1, Marcus arrived at 8:15 a.m., just like always. Fact hash 2, Claire pulled in 5 minutes later. Observation, they didn't walk in together. No stolen glances, no lingering touches. Professional, too professional. I dug deeper. Over the next week I followed patterns, tracked routines, and, most importantly, hacked into Marcus's cloud account. Thank God he never changed his password from our anniversary. What I found was a meticulously constructed double life. Emails to Claire dating back 2 years, buried under innocuous subject lines like Project Update and Q3 reports. Hotel receipts for weekends he'd supposedly been on business trips. A separate bank account with withdrawals at jewelry stores, spas, and most damning, a payment to a private investigator. My private investigator. You're obsessing, Daniel said one night, watching me spread printed emails across the kitchen table. I didn't look up. I'm strategizing. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Elena, it's over. He's moved on. You should too. My head snapped up. Moved on? Moved on? I let out a bitter laugh. He was cheating on me long before I ever met you, Daniel. This wasn't some tragic love story. It was a setup. Daniel's jaw tightened. What are you talking about? I slid a sheet of paper toward him, a screenshot of an email from Marcus to Claire, dated 3 months before I'd even met Daniel. Subject, plan update body. She's lonely. It won't take much. Just keep me posted. Daniel paled. This doesn't prove anything, doesn't it? I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper. Tell me, Daniel, how did we meet again? He hesitated. At the cafe, you spilled your coffee and you just happened to be there. I finished for him. Just happened to be charming. Just happened to be exactly what I needed. A muscle twitched in his cheek. I smiled. Cold, calculating. I'll ask you one more time. Did Marcus hire you? The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then, Daniel did the one thing I hadn't expected. He laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a guilty one. A genuine, darkly amused chuckle. Oh, Elena, he said, shaking his head. You really have no idea, do you? I stiffened. What's that supposed to mean? He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, scrolling before turning the screen toward me. A text thread. With Claire. Daniel. She knows. Claire. About you or Marcus? Daniel. Both, soon. My blood ran cold. Daniel smirked. Marcus didn't hire me, Elena. Claire did. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. Marcus had been cheating with Claire. Claire, fearing his wavering commitment, had planted Daniel in my path. And Daniel? He wasn't some lovesick fool. He was a paid actor. I stood abruptly, the chair screeching against the floor. "Get out!" Daniel didn't move. "Elena, get out!" He left, but not before delivering one final blow. "Just so you know," he said, pausing in the doorway, "Marcus never loved you, and Claire, she adores him. You never stood a chance." Alone, I stared at the evidence spread before me. The emails, the receipts, the betrayal. Marcus thought he could walk away unscathed. Claire thought she'd won. Daniel thought he could just leave. No, this wasn't just a divorce. This was war. And I had just become the most dangerous player of all. The moment Daniel's taunt faded with the slam of the front door, my hands stopped shaking. A strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes when you finally see the battlefield clearly. I methodically gathered the scattered evidence from the table, smoothing each wrinkled page with deliberate strokes. The hotel receipts, the emails, the damning text between Daniel and Claire, they weren't just proof of betrayal. They were weapons. Phase 1. Financial ruin. Marcus had left me the house, the accounts, everything, not out of generosity, but because he knew I'd never look deeper. Fact, our joint savings account still showed $187,000. Observation, the monthly statements had stopped coming by mail 6 months ago. I logged into the online portal, fingers flying across the keyboard. The screen loaded. Current balance, $3,221. My breath hitched. A series of large transfers, each labeled Investment M. Whitmore, had drained nearly everything over the past year. But Marcus didn't invest. He kept his money in savings, paranoid about the stock market. I cross-referenced the dates with his emails. Bingo. Every transfer aligned with a message to Claire about handling the paperwork. The first strike. I arrived at First National Bank at 9:02 a.m., dressed in the cream-colored blouse Marcus had always loved. The manager, Linda, greeted me with a sympathetic smile. "Mrs. Whitmore, how can we—" "I need to report fraudulent transfers from my joint account," I said, sliding a notarized affidavit across her desk. "My ex-husband stole $183,000 during our marriage." Linda's smile vanished. She scanned the document, then my face. "This is serious. Very." I tapped the highlighted email printout where Marcus instructed Claire to move the funds before Elena notices. He was planning this for months. Fact. Under marital law, concealed assets during divorce proceedings are illegal. Result, by noon, a judge froze Marcus's personal accounts pending investigation. Phase 2. Social destruction. Claire worked in HR at Marcus's firm, a fact she'd used to monitor office gossip about us. Now it would destroy her. I created a fake email, hr_whistleblower@protonmail.com. Message to the CEO, subject compliance violation, Claire Reynolds and Marcus Whitmore. Attachments, screenshots of Claire accessing confidential employee files, including mine, hotel receipts billed as client meetings on company cards, their shared Uber rides to midday hotel check-ins. Logic. Corporations tolerate many sins, but not liability risks. The next morning, Claire was placed on administrative leave. By afternoon, Marcus was summoned to legal. My phone rang at 3:17 p.m., blocked number. I answered on the 4th ring. "Speak. Jesus Christ, Elena." Marcus's voice was raw, a tone I'd only heard when his father died. "What the hell did you do?" I sipped my tea, watching rain streak the windows. "I believe the legal term is full financial disclosure." A sharp inhale. "You're lying to the bank. Those transfers were for—" "Your secret apartment with Claire?" I interrupted. "Yes, I found the lease too. 221B Harbor View, paid via our savings. How cliché." Silence. Then a hoarse whisper. "You'll regret this." "Will I?" I set down my cup with a soft clink. "Tell me, Marcus, does Claire know about your vasectomy last year? The one you hid while she was accidentally stopping her birth control?" The line went dead. Daniel thought he'd escaped unscathed. He forgot 2 things. I still had his employment contract from the freelance consulting firm Claire hired him through. His real name wasn't Daniel Carter, it was Daniel Reynolds, Claire's baby brother. The Instagram post went live at 7:30 p.m. at Truth in Tech, verified industry watchdog account. Breaking: Daniel Carter, the fake consultant hired to manipulate women for corporate espionage schemes, exposed. Full report link in bio. By midnight, his LinkedIn was flooded with demands for comment. By morning, his real employer, Claire's husband's tech startup, launched an internal audit. The doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m. Claire stood on my porch, mascara streaked down her face, her Gucci purse dangling like a broken wing. "You bitch," she hissed. You ruined everything. I leaned against the doorframe. Correction you did when you hired an amateur. She lunged. I sidestepped, letting her stumble into the foyer. Marcus is done with you, she spat. He's filing for defamation. I smiled, pulling out my phone. On screen, a live feed of 221B Harbor View, where Marcus was currently packing suitcases. Funny, I mused. He doesn't look like a man planning to stay. Claire's face crumpled. 3 days later, the notification popped up. Zillow alert. 221B Harbor View. Price reduced 30% Marcus was selling. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed, offer, $1 above asking price, all cash, close immediately. I'd own the apartment he bought to cheat on me. As the acceptance email chimed, I poured a glass of wine and toasted the empty room. Game over.